Hello, fellow Ag Nerd. Today's special episode is what I like to call a spotlight. So instead of our normal format of like a 40-ish minute long form deep dive interview, it's just a short peek into something that I find interesting. The topics for these spotlights are often determined in collaboration with our quarterly presenting sponsor, which this quarter is Case IH. And often a spotlight segment will feature a customer of the sponsor, someone we can talk to about their experiences, their view on the future of agriculture, and of course, how they are interacting with the sponsor for the quarter. But with Case IH, we decided to take a little bit of a different approach. They've given me access to some of their key people to learn more about all that goes into developing the technology of the future, the tractors and the equipment that farmers use every day. Some of these people at Case IH that I've had the chance to meet are also farmers as well, which is the case for today's spotlight subject, Dan Klein. Dan is the customer insights lead with Case IH and CNH. He grew up on a farm in southwest Wisconsin, where he still stays actively involved working with his brother. He holds a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and a master's in engineering management, which has supported his 17-year career now at CNH. What I wanted to know from Dan is how a company of this size collects and incorporates feedback directly from farmer customers, and how that feedback eventually gets into the design process for their machinery. They have a built by farmers promise, but how are they actually executing on that promise and making it real? So that guiding question is where we'll kick off today's spotlight with Dan Klein.
So we gather customer feedback in many different formats and forums. There's many surveys, there's delivery inspections from dealers. We're constantly working on improving quality through those day-to-day activities. What we're more focused on is taking that to the next level and get a truer, deeper understanding of what are the problems our customers are up against in their operations. And so we have a team globally positioned in the region to be closer to our customers, to engage with our current marketing teams, sales teams, product specialists, engineering teams, and to actually go out and visit customers, solicit interviews and bring that knowledge back into our teams. So from a day-to-day perspective, we're doing a couple of things. First and foremost, we'll engage with our customers to make sure that we get to that deeper understanding. And we do that through a series of means. And some of that process that we use within CNH and specifically have used on product lines is what we call the customer-driven product definition process. CDPD. This is to really get a cross-functional group of people into the field next to a customer in their operating environment, into their comfort zone, and dive into what they want to see in the future. And normally it's a fun experience because one, you get a manufacturing person next to a marketing person, next to an engineering person, talking to a customer. You get a lot of innovative spirits from different lenses coming together. And then you talk to the customer and they're typically got a list of things that say, here's all the things that are wrong with the product or what I'd like to see in the next vehicle, planter, tractor, precision technology, whatever it is. But then we get into really why. The important part for us is to understand the why, because a lot of feedback we can get at the superficial level that says it's broke, I need more power, it's not comfortable. But in order to execute on a product strategy, I need to understand the why. And so the fun part is asking customers to go into the whys and explain more importantly what it is that's preventing them from being more successful, but also what they define for success. Many different regions, many different customers, things like that. And so, we'll talk with customers in their operation about what technology they need, but then we'll understand more about why they need it and what they're doing with it so that we can bring it back to our engineering teams and really figure out how do we solve the problem beyond what the complaint is or the opportunity is.
How do you know in that process of asking why, when you've arrived at really the root cause? How do you know when you've asked enough whys, I guess is my question.
There's a couple of fun experiences that we can highlight there, but some of them is just getting that feel to say, what are you looking at? What's important? What prevents you from doing this? How are you using it? It's really an educational impact. And the nice thing about a cross-functional team conducting those interviews is someone has a different lens. And so you're not looking to interview someone to confirm what you think you know. You're looking to interview someone to understand it better so you can really bring that information back. And so early on in the process, we use this very repeatedly to make sure that we're not leading customers to something that we've already got designed or something that they think they need on their farm. This is about understanding how they could use it in their operation. And then we'll come back later throughout the process to really define the concepts, the evaluations. It's not one and done. It's a continuous feedback loop to make sure that we understand what the need was, that what we designed and made a concept for meets their expectations or something that could be adapted to their operation. And then once we get into the industrialization phase, that it's coming off the assembly line at the level of quality that they would use and expect in their operation. And the fun part about getting that to that level is when you have the conversation that says, when I'm going through the field, I don't like it when it does this. You can also build that into your product validation model to say, I need to make sure it tests that criteria, that test case, that use case, that soil tests, things like that, to make sure that we're addressing that. So when it launches at the end, it meets those expectations.
And, you being a farmer yourself, you're kind of coming to this with a really sound knowledge of those very high level needs. Can you give us an example of an insight or two where you're like, oh, I guess I never really thought about it that way, or I would have never really intuitively got there without having this sort of data collection? Any insights that you think are interesting as a result of your work?
Yeah, I think there's a number of those that come together. So, growing up on a farm and engaging with the North America team for as long as I did, there's a lot of global influences that come into the farming operations. And so we want to paint a picture of what the general tractor or general product needs to be. But we also can't just focus in on one interview or one customer because that pixel is part of the overall picture that we want to paint for our customers. And that ultimately comes back to insights gathered that are region specific, but also maybe business minded centric. So ultimately, a lot of our customers are innovative in their own mind and they're trying new farming practices to push the envelope on their ROI. So how do we support, sustainability initiatives, cover crops? How do we make our products adapt more insightfully to that? When we've had some developments on some of our products, really understanding how they service, maintain, and keep the product up and running are different. Some require a dealer, some do it on their own farm. Those are things that we're always looking for to pull out some of the conversation so that when we do bring that product, it's a quality product and it's a well-defined and valuable product for our customers.
I guess, one thing that I think about, and there's a quote I think it's attributed to Henry Ford, although I don't know if he's really the one who said it, right? Which is like, if I asked a customer what they wanted, it to be a faster horse. And so how do you think about that? Whereas taking, it sounds like you're really going through a lot of effort to just not take the first response you get from a customer, but to understand the root causes. But beyond that, how do you think about, this tension between leading the industry forward versus, going to where the customer says they want you to go?
Yeah, so it's a great line that we use quite often is the Henry Ford quote, right? But at the same time, we were asking the right questions. From our standpoint, if we get to that deeper understanding of what the problem was, the solution that Henry Ford made was a vehicle. That's the innovative spirit that we're trying to bring in our team is, what the customer wanted was a faster way to get from point A to point B so they could get more done in a day. Now, how do we bring that solution forward is what we are focused on delivering. And so when we look at, making things easy to use and asking the right questions, when we bring products to market, it's a full system analysis that says, from a training, from a dealer support, from intuitive, YouTube videos to training, how do we get the use of the technology into the customer? And so, when we do that concept testing throughout, we're trying to get a mix of customers as well, right? The traditional, the more technology leading people, and then the mix of customers so that we can evaluate the concepts. But then also in those concept development stages, we can understand what the adoption hurdles may be. Is it something that's going to require more training? Is it something that's going to need to change so that it doesn't require training, which is our ultimate goal? When we're pushing the envelope on some of the technology and the new things that are out there, we always got to tie it back to what problem are we solving? How much value is it going to create for our customers? And if we can create that much value, what are we going to do to make sure that it's consistently utilized in the marketplace and when they get out there? When we look at profitability from customers, as an example, some of them look at productivity, some of them look at pure cost, meaning labor, fuel, things like that. And what we're looking for is ultimately we want to reduce the cost, but we also want to increase the value. And those are basically not mutually exclusive of each other. I can reduce fuel consumption, but if it doesn't give me more done in the day, the value of getting more done in the day is more profitable for our customers than maybe controlling the cost. So we need to do both. But when there are trade-offs in our engineering team, we want to be able to quantify how that impacts the customer and make sure that's front and center to how our customers use the product, but also how our engineering team is dividing and making decisions.
Well, let's take all this and kind of put it in the context of the Magnum series. Is there anything you can point to specifically where you're like, look, that would not have come from us if not for our, insights generated from the customer? Anything with the Magnum that you're like, that's a direct result of, farmer-led innovation?
Yeah, I think it's a great comment to me on farmer-led innovation, because that's really what we're looking for. We're trying to drive inspiration from our customers that also bring it in. When we look at some of the problems of a tractor like a Magnum that's trying to solve for a customer, it's typically in operations like haulage, planting, and tillage as the main categories, and then obviously branching out into other livestock, hay operations, things like that. When we go out and look at customers' needs, one of the things that they're always looking for is better agronomic productivity and better agronomic value. And so, some of the configurations that we have on the tractors with different axles, tracks, wheels, hydraulic controls, things like that are things that run in the background. When we look at the APM, the auto productivity management, that's about trying to get my power shift tractor as efficient as possible, independent of the operator. And so truly understanding the customer needs on getting a less skilled operator into the cab and providing the efficiencies are things that we build into that. Serviceability is another great example that we bring in. So, every day, what are you greasing? What are you checking for oil levels? Where is it at? How do we build in that? How does a different sized or aged farmer get around the machine to be able to wash windows and things like that? All that stuff is being fed into current product improvements and future big leaps. And to understanding, how do I get more done in a day or in a time period that's achievable for the customer?
It is fascinating to me how a company the size of Case IH or CNH creates these systems like the customer-driven product definition process, the CDPD process, to understand the customer's experiences, and even more tricky, understand the context and the root causes of the feedback they're collecting. It also made me think about the fine line between going where the customer says they want you to go, and on the other side, innovating brand new ways that the customer hasn't even considered for how their pain points could be solved, for how their life could be better through these types of solutions. Well, thank you very much to Dan Klein for providing today's Spotlight segment, and thanks to Case IH for being our quarterly presenting sponsor this quarter. I'll be back with another full-length episode here in a couple days.